Trish, go ahead and tell everybody what we're doing.
Well, along with President John's theme, sunshine. We love that sunshine, so it's a sunshine song. Here we go. You are my sunshine. Here we go. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. The other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I dreamed I held you in my arms. When I awoke, dear, I was mistaken, and I hung my head and cried. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. You told me once, dear, you really loved me, and no one else would come between. But now you've left me for another, and you've shattered all my dreams. Last time, here we go. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Take my sunshine away. Well done, you sounded great.
Well, thank you so much, Trish and Jevin. That's a great way to start our meeting today. Everybody have a smile on their face, very positive thoughts. So thank you very much. I want to thank Stephen Hall and Dave Given for greetings, and of course Pete Delaney, who is going to do our meeting reporting today for our bulletin, which is so important. And we have welcoming our guests on the screen, and you can see that here, and a couple of the guests. Thank you, give them applause. We always like to have people join us and hope that most of our guests will consider joining our Rotary Club, because we always want to welcome new members, and we'll hear more about that in a couple of minutes too. So given that, I'm going to ask that our immediate past president, Nancy, would you please come up and introduce our new members?
We have a twofer, so I have one on either side of me. I'm going to start with Jose, because he became newer than you. How's that? Good. I'm pleased to share with you the story of our newest member, Jose Iniguez. He was born in the small town of Mattawa, Washington, between Yakima and Othello. So you can refer to a map and you'll find it. He's the 7th of 11 children. The family struggled financially, but was unified by their love of traditional Mexican music that they loved to share together. Jose's father encouraged all the kids to work hard and aspire to having a practical career. So therefore, all 11 siblings earned a bachelor's degree, with 8 of them also getting a master's degree. Jose initially studied music in college to continue his love of performing, but then switched to a degree in business. Music never left his heart, however, and Jose has built an incredible reputation as one of the few tenors in the nation to combine opera and mariachi bolero music in his concerts. Woo. Pretty good. This fusion of traditional opera and Mexican boleros was the seed that would eventually become Encanto Arts, the nonprofit where Jose now serves as executive director. Jose soon began traveling throughout the state of Washington, performing in rural communities, high schools, and colleges. He was joined by local musicians, performers, and mariachi groups who backed his performances. In 2013, he began using the performances to raise money for college scholarships for cultural organizations and arts groups. One of the most significant development was the establishment of the first scholarship endowment for Latino and Latina students at Eastern Washington, Central Washington University, Columbia Basin College, and most recently at Wenatchee Valley College. This achievement is historic. These were the first scholarships of their kind, and to endow them was an incredible benefit to the communities. Why these universities and colleges? It is because they are the nearest universities to the orchards and farms in Washington State. So it's making a huge difference. The arts program mentors youth by giving them the opportunity to collaborate and perform with professional musicians to experience the beauty of opera arias, classical piano, and mariachi boleros all rolled into one. This is the power of music, and Jose likes to describe the thought that it's essentially the American dream in action. Jose is passionate about educating, motivating, and inspiring others, especially students, to achieve extraordinary results. Dave Given and I have the privilege of mentoring him in this club as he gets to know more of us, and we're looking forward to knowing more of him and using his gifts to positively impact Seattle Rotary. He had some pretty cool shots up there too. I didn't want to pick on them. They're self-explanatory, and we do get to hear him sing sometime. I know that's going to be pretty amazing. So our second newest member is Karen Kalish. She is new to our community just for 21 months when she moved here from St. Louis. She's loving the water, the mountains, and being in a blue city in a blue state. Yeah, Karen has also lived in Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Cambridge. She taught at some interesting parts of her background was she taught at the school that the Obama girls attended, but has also been a TV reporter at CBS in Washington, worked for ABC in Chicago, and Entertainment Tonight. She then did an adventure with her own business, teaching people how to talk to the media without putting feet in their mouths. Feet in their mouths, singular, I guess. She went to the Harvard Kennedy School of Music for a master's in public policy at the tender age of 54. She's so proud of this degree that she even had Kinko's enlarge the diploma into wallpaper, which she left behind in St. Louis. But we've got the picture. It was near the toilet, which, I mean, what can we say about that? I went to Yale, so I can say that about that. So Karen calls herself a serial social entrepreneur, having started 3 nonprofits and other programs. 2 are year-long leadership programs for teenagers committed to civil rights, social justice, and democracy. 1 in DC and the other in St. Louis, and both are still going strong, the great foundation that she helped establish for them. The students learned how to be troublemakers of the best kind, which is exactly how some describe Karen. One of the favorite speakers for these students was Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, so that was an awesome treat for them to meet. Another is a program that put police recruits into low-performing schools to read with struggling students, mutually beneficial for both. She called it Books and Badges and would love to try it here in Seattle. The 4th nonprofit is a program that trains and pays teachers to go to the homes of their struggling students. The mission is to get then the parents engaged in their children's education. She is, in fact, trying that here at the Rising Star Elementary School, which is on Beacon Hill. She trained the faculty to make these home visits, and since last August, they've made more than 200 visits. So that's an awesome impact already. Karen has made many, many friends in Seattle. She counts more than 400 new friends, but I think we have to add about 100 more in this room. And then she says yes to everything. So that's a flaw that she'll acknowledge sometimes. She holds fundraisers for candidates, issues, and nonprofits that are progressive, liberal, and democratic. She's on the board of KUOW and is now working to get Jeremiah Zahili elected to King County Executive. Karen's friends admit that there is no off button on her. She's full of energy and wants to create a different future for those who have the least, especially our struggling young people of color. She believes that doing for others is the rent we pay for living on earth, and she promises me she's asking people to put that on her tombstone. And that's just a great motivation for others who will be walking by many decades in the future. They'll see that. Sarah Weaver is getting the privilege of serving as Karen's mentor, and we'll all be learning from Karen as Rotarians as we see the energy she puts into our club, and we're grateful to have you.
I understand that they want a picture. You need to be here too. So we'll take a couple of seconds to do a picture, and I'm going to give Karen and Jose their Rotary pins.
Good, let's put them in the middle. Let's have them.
All right.
They're the most important ones here.
Yes, we'll.
No, let's do boy.
Little musical chairs? Should we move over?
No, we're fine.
All right.
Thank you. Well, that's wonderful. And now, it's time for our main program. And I have the honor of introducing Jeffery Robinson. Jeffery is the founder and chief executive officer of the Who We Are Project, which aims to become one of the central voices in correcting the narrative of our shared history of anti-Black racism in the United States. He's a former deputy legal director and director of the ACLU's Trone Center for Justice and Equality. He graduated from Harvard Law School in 1981, and in the decades since, he's worked on criminal and racial justice issues. Initially, he represented indigent clients in state courts at the Defender Association here in Washington, and then in federal courts and the Federal Public Defender's Office in Seattle. In 1988, Jeffery began a 27-year private practice at Schroeder, Goldmark, and Bender, one of our great law firms here in Seattle, and he represented a broad range of clients. In 2015, Jeffery joined the ACLU, and on April 1st of 2021, he left the ACLU and launched the Who We Are Project. He's a faculty member of the National Criminal Defense College and has lectured on trial skills all over the United States. He's past president of the Washington Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and both a past member of the board of directors and a life member of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. He's also an elected fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, and given that, Jeffery, as soon as he walks up here, I will give him the podium.
It is an honor and a delight to be here this afternoon. And if you go and look through some recent newspaper articles, you'll see about some events that happened at the National Park Service. They have historic sites all over the country, and most of those historic sites have websites. And on the website about the Underground Railroad, the picture of Harriet Tubman was deleted from the front page. And a passage, all descriptions of slavery were deleted from the description. At other websites run by the National Park Service, the fact that Ben Franklin owned enslaved people was taken down. There is a Minuteman Park, which is about the Revolutionary War. And there was a passage on that website that talked about the lack of recognition for black soldiers who fought for American independence. And this is what it said. Unfortunately, systemic racism and historic bias have erased or buried many records of black and indigenous people who played prominent roles in the founding of the United States. Excuse me, that was taken down. Is the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. next? Despite what you hear from many sources, the truth, meaning the actual, factual, complete, accurate description of what has and has not happened in this country, the truth is actually a thing, and it exists. And there's also a truth about the role of anti-black racism in the development of our country. And attempts to modify, suppress, erase, or hide that truth will fail. Because if they don't, we're going to be living in a country that nobody in this room will recognize. So, everybody has a role to play. And I was going along doing my thing as a criminal defense lawyer, and some facts caught up with me and kind of changed the path of what I ended up doing. And so the time is now, and we are ready at the Who We Are project. If you look at that blackboard, like an image of things that are being erased, because there is a concerted effort to erase the truth about our history that's going on in this country right now, and it is critical that we push back. So the vision of the Who We Are project, if you can't see that sign, it says everybody against racism. And this isn't like some Pollyannish kind of thing. It's a belief that for the vast majority of people in this country, if you give them factual, honest, confirmable information, it will make them step back and say, I didn't know that. Maybe I should consider that. The vision of the Who We Are project is a history that we will provide a history of the U.S. And when I say we and other organizations, nobody's doing this alone, but to provide a history of the U.S. that's true, accurate, complete, and known throughout the nation. We envision a reckoning with the nation's history of anti-black racism as a necessary first step toward racial restoration and equity. And toward this vision, we plan on being one of the organizations where you can come and find this truth. And we will be looking for you to help deliver it. So they told me I had to do this about like how I got here, so I'm going to tell you. I knew I was going to be a criminal defense lawyer from the time I was 11 years old. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and in 1968, my father took me to court when a whole bunch of ministers and other people who were arrested at the march that Martin Luther King led in support of the sanitation workers, they'd been arrested and they were in court. And my dad took me to court, and I saw these lawyers. I didn't know who they were or what they were, but I was asking my dad, how do you become one of them? And my dad was a high school principal, and he's like, well, first you got to get good grades in high school, and I'm like, that ain't happening. And then he says, you got to get good grades in college, and then you got 3 years of law school, and I'm adding it up. And it's like, I'll be 25 years old by the time that happens. I'll be ancient. But from that day, I knew I was going to be a criminal defense lawyer. And one of the ways to become a better criminal defense lawyer was to go to the National Criminal Defense College. And this is the essence of what is taught at that college. How do you walk into a room with 12 people that you've never met before and ask them to do something that they're likely not interested in doing, like sending a person who's charged with a crime home? You don't do that with fancy words or fancy speaking techniques. Those are all fine and those help. But the thing that wins cases, facts. That's what can turn somebody around, facts. And that's what I learned at the National Criminal Defense College, and it has informed everything we're doing at the Who We Are Project. So 2011, I'm just marching on, and things are going well, and my wife's sister passed away in New York City. Her mother, who was living with her sister, also passed away within about 3 months of each other. And so our 13-year-old nephew, Matthew, became our 13-year-old son. And he moved from New York to Seattle, and all of a sudden I had this kid in my living room saying things like, what do I do if the cops roll up on me? What do I do if I'm at a party and something happens? And I panicked. My wife and I didn't have kids, so I went looking for information about how do I raise this young man. And I didn't find stuff that was very helpful, but what I did find was facts about our history that I had never heard before. Despite going to Marquette University and Harvard Law School, I had never heard them before. And I started traveling around the country giving presentations, and the presentations were 3 hours to 3 hours and a half long. And organizations would say, can't you do it in 45 minutes? And I'd say, no, I can't. And in one of these presentations in New York City, a lawyer named Sarah Kunstler was in the room. That's Kunstler, as in the daughter of William Kunstler, one of the most renowned civil rights lawyers in American history. She and her sister Emily are filmmakers, and they sat down with me on June 20th, we figured this out, 2017, and said, we want to make your talk into a film. And I just laughed at them. I thought, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. 364 days later, on Juneteenth 2018, we were in Town Hall Theater in New York City with a sold-out audience and 7 cameras, and we began filming what became a documentary film called Who We Are, A Chronicle of Racism in America, released in 2022 in over 300 theaters, Netflix and other platforms. I think it's streaming on Amazon right now, and it's coming back to Netflix, although I didn't say that because I'm not supposed to. And you can find it in all kinds of places. And this was a major production for the Who We Are Project, which was essentially myself, a woman named Andrea Crabtree, and people that helped us. So, what's the problem? The history of anti-black racism begins before the Constitution and continues today. If you ask someone, what do you think the laws in the colonies were like? And remember, when people are saying, well, there was like colonial America and then constitutional United States, and that's really different. Well, the homies that were colonial people on one day, on the next day, they were United States citizens. So there is no difference. It's a continuum. And if you saw some of the laws that were passed in colonial America, you would be shocked. They were the most racist, overtly bigoted, dishumanizing things you have ever seen. And that continued through the Civil War and after that. The loss of history and the erasure of stories continues today. What that is steps in Tulsa, Oklahoma, from a place that they call the Steps of No Return. There were literally mansions owned by black people who were among the richest people in America in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in the massacre, they were burned to the ground, and nothing has ever been rebuilt there. So if you drive by it, you'll just see a bunch of stairs leading up to nothing. And exclusive systems of history, exclusive meaning we're going to choose what we teach and what we don't teach. They result in an incomplete narrative in schools and the media. And the solution is simple, it's just the truth. And we plan on meeting people with the truth wherever they are. This is a statement that I found really interesting. Racism is so American that when you protest against it, people think you're protesting against America. I think the thing I'm doing right now is the most patriotic thing I have ever done in my entire life. Because as I have been told, if you actually love something or someone, then you tell them when they're screwing up. You don't let them sit with the thing on their face and not mention it. You say, yo, wipe your face. Look at how you're presenting yourself. So, We're at the starting point in this country, and it is a starting point because remember, our country's 400 years old, and people talk about, oh, this moment or that moment. We have a long history, and we are starting to reckon with anti-black racism. Some people are going to be afraid because it challenges the status quo, and that always makes us uncomfortable. I talk about diagnosis before treatment. If you went to a doctor and as soon as you walked in the room, the doctor said, I know what's wrong with you here. I want you to take this injection. You'd be saying, wait a minute, I haven't even told you what's wrong with me yet. This is why we have taken 3 steps backward and 2 steps forward on racial justice in this country because we have never dealt with the root problem. We have never gone all the way down to where racism began and how something that happened in 1619 can still have an impact in 2025. And we will not solve the problem until we address the root issue of the problem. Everybody knows that. So we're going to make information not just available, but accessible. And we've been doing a lot since the film. We have spoken to over 100 organizations, including the Seattle Police Department, and I want to thank the chief of the Seattle Fire Department, who's sitting right back there, who was courageous in asking his organization to come and see this film and then have a conversation. There were a whole lot of people that didn't want that to happen, and the chief did it anyway. Chief, thank you very, very much. And I will just say quickly, there are a lot of people in this room who have supported this project, and I would not be standing here without their support. And so this is just for me. This is my own just little applause to those folks, and a thank you. So in Washington, State of Washington employees, all 60,000, will see the film Who We Are, Chronicle of Racism in America, and their managers will engage in conversations with them about the film. In the Seattle Police Department, there's a program called Before the Badge, where recruits to the department, before they ever go to the academy, see this film and then have a conversation led by a formerly incarcerated person and a Seattle police officer. I already mentioned that the chief screened this film for the Seattle Fire Department. And we did a presentation for the Administrative Office of the Courts that was lambasted on conservative radio. They're indoctrinating the people at the AOC down in Tacoma. And it was a great introduction because I was able to say to those folks, watch this film and just ask yourself, is this indoctrination or is this just fact? These are examples of the social media work that we're doing, putting out each of these as a title page and run 7 or 8 slides deep, talking about issues that are important. Because as Sarah Kunstler has said a lot, do you really think the only place young people get an education is in the classroom? There's a thing called the internet. And if you've dealt with 15 or 16-year-old kids before, you know that the quickest way to get them to read something is to tell them that they can't. We are working on a 6 to 8 part docuseries. We have finished the initial episode, finished filming, and we're now in final edits. And I would introduce it this way. Welcome to another country where new truths emerge from the roads we travel together. This docuseries explores culture, music, food, and untold stories of anti-black racism that have shaped the cities we think we know across America. We finished filming in 2024. And then in 2025, the leader of the current administration said, I am going to erase the first sentence of the 14th Amendment. We had no idea that was going to happen, but what we were filming about in Memphis is the barbecue, and let me just say, Kansas City, any other place, forget about it. Memphis has the best barbecue in the world. Thank you very much. There's barbecue, there's music, there's all kinds of culture. And there was a massacre there in May of 1866, and 4 4.5 weeks later, Congress passed the 14th Amendment. They actually sent down a delegation and took evidence. They got books you got to put gloves on to read. And all of this evidence about what happened. And when you understand what was happening and what went into the 14th Amendment, it's an insult. For him to say, I'll take a piece of paper and a pen and wipe away 48 black people killed. Every school, church, and every school and church in the black community burned to the ground. Teachers in those schools sent notes saying, you saw what we did to the schools? You're next. We ain't educating these N-words. You better get out of here. I had no idea any of this happened until about 12 months ago, and I frickin' grew up there. I had no idea. And so part of what we're doing in this docuseries is exploring these kind of stories that people may have no idea about, but it shows you how deep the rabbit hole runs. So the pilot is in final editing. A 20-minute segment has been submitted to the Tribeca Film Festival, works in progress, and we're looking to try and get this into distribution in this year or next year. And we're working with Tom Hanks and his company Playtone. They're co-producers and co-producers of the best kind. Jeff, you know this stuff and we don't. We don't want any input on content, but we can get you into rooms that you can't get into without us, and that's how they are helping. And speaking of Mr. Hanks, he and I are going to start a podcast. We're filming the first episode on May 1st, I think, and it is going to be an exploration. It just so turns out he saw the film and he got really interested. And he has been a supporter for the last 3 years, a significant supporter. And one of the things we discovered is that we're both 68 years old. He was born in July of '56. I was born in August of '56. We had so many major events in American history that were happening to us when we were at the exact same age, and we were experiencing them in radically different ways. He is a history buff, and so we are going to have guests on our podcast, not guests like famous people, but people who have lived experience that can talk about issues that are critical in this country. And our goal in the podcast is that at the end of it, people will be going, I hadn't considered that before, because that is the first step toward cognitive dissonance, and that is the first step toward getting somebody to do something that they haven't done before. I'm finishing a book. I have no idea what the title is going to be. Penguin Random House just got the final edit. You don't know how relieved that made me feel, but it is going to look at a number of 5 different areas. People say, I don't know what systemic racism means. We're going to look at education, housing, policing, punishment, and voting, and demonstrate how deliberate, intentional, completely conscious government decisions at the state, federal, and local level drove anti-black racism in this country from the time it was founded in 1776, or 1789 if you want to get technical, up through and including today. And it's only when you understand how deep the rabbit hole goes that you start thinking about solutions that might make sense. So our team, really quickly, from 2022 to 2025, we focused on building a core team. In 2022, it was me and Andrea Crabtree. The next year, we added an executive assistant. Last year, we made what was one of the most crucial hires in the history of the organization, Caitlin Lombardi, sitting right here, who is our new development director. We have just hired a managing editor, and we're going to be hiring a managing director and a programs director to show you how desperate people are in this administration to suppress issues of quote-unquote DEI. We have 2 positions. We got over 1,000 applications. Think about how many people have lost work in this place. And let me just say this quickly. I'm willing to bet nobody in this room can give me a definition of DEI that the administration has used, because they've never given one. And I would just ask you to think, if you're not for diversity, then you're for uniformity. And if you're not for equity, then you're for inequity. And if you're not for inclusion, then you're for exclusion. And I would just ask, factually speaking, take a look at not what I say, what the administration has done, and ask yourselves what matches up. In 2026 through 2029, we are going to build out the rest of our team, a content director, a programs manager, operations and HR manager, a development assistant, and then from 2027 to 2029, building out the rest of this organization. One of the most liberating things that I figured out is that when I am dead and rotting in the ground, the Who We Are project is going to need to be continuing. And it was an incredible relief, an incredible burden off my shoulders to finally figure out, and part of it was just arrogance. It's like, oh, I got to fix this. It's like, who the hell do you think you are? You ain't fixing anything. But you can be part of a fix, and you can start an organization that will go on when you are no longer there, because we have 400 years of this stuff to unpack, and we have to start playing the long game. This is not about this administration or the 2026 midterms or the next election, 2028, I'm trying to move them up, or the next election. This is about the long term. This is about the next quarter century, because all these things that are being banned from schools, why do you think they're doing that? Because if the young people never learn it, they will be susceptible to hearing stuff and thinking, oh, this is new, when actually it goes back to the Civil War. It goes back to separate but equal. So, what will it take to keep moving forward? I want to end like this, with this quote from Audre Lorde, who is an amazing woman. To refuse to participate in the shaping of our future is to give it up. So don't be misled into passivity, either by false security, they're not coming for me, because I think what we have seen tells us they're not coming for me yet. Or by despair, there's just nothing that we can do, it's too big, it's too chaotic. Each of us has to find our work and then do it. The Who We Are project is not going to solve this entire problem, but we've got a lane, education, at every level. People tell me, Jeff, who's your target audience? You can't say everybody because it has to be more narrow than that. And I'm like, okay, everybody. Because there are people who, I had one of the best educations in America, and 80% of the stuff that went into that film I never had heard before. And I'm thinking, if I don't know this stuff, how many other people don't know this stuff? And how many people will start asking, why would you take Harriet Tubman's picture off of the title page of the Underground Railroad? And why would you take the word slavery and take it out of everything that talks about what the Underground Railroad was about? So, I want to thank you for your attention. As I said, we're not solving everything, but we got one lane, education, and we're going to take up as much room in that lane as we possibly can. So you will definitely be hearing more from us. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Oh, thank y'all, folks. Don't do that. Thank you very, very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here.
Thank you, Jeff, so
Yes, ma'am.
much, and thank you for your work. You mentioned that, for example, Washington State employees are all going to be viewing your film and then discussing it. Are you training the discussion leaders?
We are in discussions with the state of Washington. You know, they just changed administrations. We've had discussions with people at the administrative level about sitting down with the managers to talk to them about how do you talk about this. And, you know, I'm a lawyer. I am not a counselor but, you know, I've spent the last 12 years talking about this a lot. And I can tell you that one of the foundational things will be saying this to people. You probably are nervous about having this conversation because you think, if you're white, you think, I may say something and it may sound racist when I don't mean it to sound racist. Or if you're black, you're thinking, okay, if that person says something racist, do I just sit here and say nothing, or do I call it out? And if I call it out, am I the angry black person? Somebody's going to get upset. Somebody may break into tears. Somebody may storm out of the room. So I don't want to have these conversations. And my first comment is, please don't worry about any of that, because all of it will happen. Every single thing and more that you haven't even thought of. And it's like going to the dentist when you have a root canal that you need. You know that stuff is gonna hurt, but you do it anyway, because it's better to have that pain and get the things out in the open so that maybe something can be done about them. And so I think these are hard conversations to have. And I will say this, because these things have come to me, you know, at different times. And my youngest sister passed away at the end of last year, and we had a memorial in Memphis. And I met I think it would be what you call a great niece. So my niece had a baby. Is that a great niece? Okay, that's a great niece. And, you know, I'm holding this baby, and the whole family is there. And I thought, you know, when you're afraid of this kind of engagement and you get stressed out and you're thinking, I just won't want to do this anymore, I don't want to have these conversations, I would really ask everybody in this room, and to tell this to your friends, go find someone in your family that's 3 years old or younger and pick them up, hug them, kiss them, and then hold them about this far away so you can look right into their eyes and tell them, this stuff is hard. It's embarrassing. It makes me have feelings that I don't like. I'm afraid I'm going to say something wrong. So I'm going to leave it to you and your generation to fix. And if you're not willing to say that to the 3-year-old in your family, then I think it's time to buck up and do the hard stuff.
Hi, Jeff. Mark Wright. I'm a podcast developer and host. My company is developing a podcast on DEI with Amelia Ransom, a longtime DEI executive. Her husband, Reggie, came up with the title. It's called DEI AF. Ask your kids if you don't know what AF means.
Oh, I think I know.
But we're really dedicated to just telling the truth of DEI. What I think is really troubling, though, Jeff, is we're seeing some really respected nonprofits have to scrub the idea and the words of DEI and equity from their websites because they're afraid they'll lose federal funding. I'd just love some wisdom from you on that topic.
It's an interesting thing. So I was actually going to record something about this for the Who We Are project, but I'm going to say it briefly here. Caitlin, don't tell them I did this. When we captured people after 9/11, I was one of the lawyers in the first military commission, and I represented Ammar al-Baluchi, or Ali Abdul Rashid Ali. He is the nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and one of the 5 men charged with carrying out the 9/11 attacks. You may have read in the newspaper that his statement has just been suppressed by the military judge because of torture, the statements that he gave under torture. And after an 8-hour session with psychiatrists and psychologists telling us, you're criminal defense lawyers, you've represented people who've been through all kinds of trauma, congratulations. You have never dealt with a person who has been systematically tortured before, and you have no idea what you're about to walk into. At the end of that 8 hours, I was like, who convinced me to do this? I want to get out of here. Where can I get a drink? And this woman from Indiana stood up and said, I just want to show you an example of the most human behavior I have ever seen. And what I'll say is go and Google, what is it called? Battle at, I'll come up with the name before the end of it. Long story short, mom, dad, baby water buffalo are walking through the range. A pride of lions attacks them. They always, and there's a person narrating this. This woman is narrating. They always go for the weakest and the people who can't defend themselves. And so they go for the baby and they pull it into the water and they're getting ready to devour it. And then the woman says, and just when you think it can't get any worse, and this huge crocodile comes and like clamps on to the baby water buffalo. And now the lions and the water buffalo are pulling back and forth, and she's like, this has no hope. Objectively speaking, this is complex enough and dangerous enough that you have no way of hoping you can resolve it. And then the lions pull the thing away from the crocodile, and you can hear the guy who's there leading the photo safari. He says, well, the lions have won. 300 water buffalo come up and surround the lions, and they're just standing there. And then one buffalo charges a lion and chases it off. And I swear to God, Battle at Krieger, I swear to God, if you watch this, when that water buffalo comes back to the herd, he's like strutting back, like, don't even come back. And then another water buffalo races in, grabs one of the lions with his horns, and throws it 15 feet into the air. And then all the other water buffalo get involved. And the calf is alive and goes back to the herd. And this woman ends this film saying, this is the best example of human behavior that I've ever seen. Because when things look darkest, when there is absolutely no hope, you do what's right anyway. And that's what I think has happened a little bit with what's happening with Harvard and Columbia. So Columbia University said, you're going to take away all of our money? Okay, we give up. And I understand, like, who in here wouldn't have that initial reaction? You're taking away billions or hundreds of millions of dollars, and Columbia gave up. And then Harvard said, and pardon my French, I'm going to ask for your indulgence. Harvard said, screw you. We're not giving up. And 12 hours later, Columbia's president writes a letter saying, well, we'd agreed to some things, but we ain't giving up, like a control over how we educate people. Columbia saw what Harvard did, and Columbia didn't come all the way, but they did something different. You have no idea who you are going to influence. I'm thinking of the programs you're running. You have no clue what one of those teenagers may be and what they may turn into because of the experience that you've given them. And so I think that's what's important for all of us, is to support institutions who are under fire like this. And I go back and forth. I'm like, I would like to become loud enough that the president turns his attention to our organization, because we don't get federal money. I don't care about his money. And there's nothing they can do to silence people who band together and go outside of the system they control. They're in control. Let me end it by saying this. Everybody in this room is of a generation to remember Richard Nixon got elected in 1972 with the largest majority in American history. And 18 months later, he was out of the White House. The future is unwritten. And so I think it's just a matter of seeing these challenges and how do we band together to support the people who are in distress. There are a whole lot of people who have a whole lot of diseases who are not going to benefit from the research that these institutions, these universities were doing. What would happen? And some of those people have money. Some of those people have friends. What would happen if those people started to stand up and say, no, we're not going for this? Yes.
Oh, that's it, but thank you for your time.
Hey,
Appreciate
thank
it
y'all.
greatly.
I appreciate it.
I have, first of all, what Jeffrey was, all right. I've been told to get by the microphone, even if I can yell at you because it doesn't get recorded. But anyway, I just wanted to mention, it's the Battle at Kruger, Kruger, and you can find it on YouTube. I just did.
Great.
So and then you can see the water buffalo and the lions and the crocodiles and.
I didn't start crying here, but when I use that film in presentations I give, 95% of the time I start crying because it takes me back to that moment in Washington, D.C., where I was in despair, and this woman is like, just be a human and you can get beyond this.
We all have our parts to do. And given that, I wanted to give you, Jeffrey, a 600 healthy servings of food that are going to be donated to Harvest Against Hunger by our Rotary Foundation.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for coming. You know, I don't remember a standing ovation like that, guys. I'm just really taken. I'm thrilled. And I know Bobby and I have worked really hard with Jeffrey on the Who We Are project, just as a personal thing, and I'm just so proud of what you have been able to do and the stories that we're going to be able to tell just about Seattle, too. We're all part of Seattle, but thank you. But there are so many stories that all of us have been part of here in Seattle, and that we don't really realize all the things that have happened, the redlining that existed, the discrimination, little things like I remember at the Bon Marché, you know, before it became Macy's, the corner shop where you were served. The only place that black employees could be were the waitresses in that restaurant, and that's here in Seattle. Interesting things. Well, I didn't want to go into what you're going to be doing, Jeffrey, but those are some of the stories that we all need to hear about. I don't want to forget David. We have plenty of time right now. David, our VP of Programs, great program here, David. You have some announcements for us.
As you know, my job is very easy because I have John as my president. And Jeff, that was quite an impressive presentation. Thank you very much. I also have to thank Jaime for letting me make these announcements because he always makes them. Anyway, this Saturday, April 19th, is our annual Boys and Girls Club Cleanup Day. Please email Jared Gross to register to attend. Families and loved ones welcome. Event starts at 9 a.m. Our April Zoom-only meeting will be next Wednesday, April 23rd at 12:30 p.m., and we will feature Jonathan Barzilai, COO of PBS. Thanks to club's member Rob Dunlap for assisting in getting this guest speaker. Saturday, May 3rd, is another service opportunity we just mentioned. Rotarians, join Rotarians for a morning of education and action along the Duwamish River. Learn more about EPA's effort to clean up the Duwamish, and then don your work gloves and help plant native trees and pull invasive plants. Plan to stay for lunch at 12 noon. Please see the club website event list for more details. And lastly, our first lunch meeting is going of May. We've been through some of those. Will be on May 7th here in Plymouth Church, featuring a guest presentation from Peace 3 Vietnams, from our own team that is working on that. This impactful organization was established by our very own club member, Geraldine Brosseau. Come early and socialize at noon. Meeting runs 12:30 to 1:30. Thank you.
You know, it will be really interesting. I just hope that everybody tunes in to next week's Zoom. Because we're going to be hearing from, as David said, the Chief Operating Officer of PBS, along with Rob Dunlop, and he will be in D.C. That is, and that's very important right now. If you've just looked at the news, that there are the push to defund entirely from the federal government standpoint, both PBS and NPR. And as a former board member of KUOW, I'm really ticked at that. And I know we're not supposed to be political, but these are important things for all of us here in this country, to be understanding of the news media, and as Jeffrey said, facts. Facts matter. Please. All right, now it's time to talk about occurrences on April 16th. I'm going back to 1705. Queen Anne of England knights scientist Isaac Newton at Trinity College in Cambridge. The apple is falling from the tree. All right. In 1862, in the American Civil War, the District of Columbia compensated Emancipation Act, a bill ending slavery in Washington, D.C. And that became law in 1862. Remember, Maryland South, Delaware, Maryland South, those were slave states, and the district was clearly a slave entity. In 1961, in a nationally broadcast speech, Cuban leader Fidel Castro declared that he is a Marxist-Leninist and that Cuba is going to adopt communism. Hasn't changed in all those years. Oh, now, a few birthdays. 1867, Wilbur Wright, airplanes. In 1889, Charlie Chaplin was born. 1924, Henry Mancini. And in 1940, Queen Margrethe II of Denmark. Today, as you would expect, is Emancipation Day in Washington, D.C., and it is World Voice Day, whatever that means. And with that, we are adjourned.